Hello, Cameron and Pierce. Following the retreat from Vilsbiburg, we get our first major battle in this campaign, at Neumarkt, St. Veit. I actually wanted to play this game with my son, but unfortunately nothing came of it. So this will be a solo match. At least he gave me some specific instructions for the deployment and tactical approach of the Austrians. I have also prepared written orders in advance for the French, which I will follow to the letter. By the way, if you watch this video to the end, you will find there a curious fact. Now to the tactical situation after the battle near Vilsbiburg. The Austrian corps retreated to Neumarkt in the hope of reinforcements and to stop the French. The main Austrian army headed back to their position, but was more than 20 kilometers away. After the battle, the French emperor was aware that this was probably not the enemy's main force. Therefore, he proceeded cautiously in pursuing the Austrians. Oudinot's corps was sent to follow the enemy and to harass him, but he should avoid a major battle. One corps was sent southeast towards Eggenfelden to cut off the enemy's retreat, with the second corps in a parallel direction in case of the enemy's main force being there. Davout's corps would rest at Vilsbiburg and act as a reserve, while Lefebvre secured the rear at Landshut. At midday, Oudinot's corps already met the opponent, tested the enemy's position, but refrained from a serious attack. Meanwhile, the Austrians had received reinforcements from the Second Reserve Corps and were preparing for defense. The badly battered Second Corps was supposed to hold Neumarkt, with the Archduke Fifth Corps on the other side of the river as a reserve. The Grenadiers and Dragoons of the Reserve Corps were to take up position near St. Veit. So the 24th went without any major incidents. On the morning of the 25th, Archduke Ludwig learned that the enemy had occupied the road to Eggenfelden, the main supply road, and was now moving west in his direction. In addition, another French corps was spotted in the northwest, approaching the river crossings at Hontem and Wolfsberg. After a brief consultation with Field Marshal Hohenzollern-Heching, his defense plan was drawn up. The Second Corps was supposed to stop Oudinot's corps in Neumarkt, and the Reserve Corps the enemy from the east, while the Archduke's Fifth Corps marched west and prevented the enemy from crossing the river. If the enemy was defeated there, the Fifth Corps would march back to help to defend Neumarkt. The fighting began around 8 a.m. by Oudinot's Second Corps advancing towards Neumarkt. However, the expected other French corps did not yet appear. Both commanders must make a command roll in the movement phase to ensure that their troops take the space already assigned on the table. Both throws failed with a 12 each. Both marshals had to wait for their next turn. This gives the Austrian corps an advantage at the race for the bridges. Shortly before 11 a.m., the corps on both sides are in position for direct attacks. 3 focal points develop, each with 2 corps facing each other. The fight between the Archduke Ludwig and Davout over the bridges, the fight over the northern bank of Neumarkt between Hohenzollern and Oudinot, as well as in southern Neumarkt, St. Veit area, between Massena and Kienmeier. In the Western Battle, Davout's leading division is forced to advance under heavy Austrian artillery fire. Zeroing on the bridges, the cannons cause severe damage to the enemy. The first attempt of crossing shortly after 1 p.m. is repelled by a combination of infantry and cavalry attacks. A regimental flag is even captured. The second attack also fails, with heavy losses for the French. In the center, Hohenzollerns corps has now repelled several attacks against Neumarkt. The French have difficulties acting in a coordinated manner in the face of the Austrian heavy defense fire. The defense is holding up better than expected. For this game, I divided Neumarkt into 4 built-up areas. 2 in the north and 2 south of the river. After the Archduke's corps marched off to the bridges, the Corps Hohenzollern had to occupy the outer 3 areas alone in order to hold Neumarkt as long as possible. On the eastern flank, the French corps was ordered to move against Neumarkt and thus ignores St. Veit, and comes under flanking fire from the Austrian artillery. They are also threatened by dragoons on the front, who are trying to prevent them the march towards Neumarkt. There's a cavalry battle at 2 o'clock, which the dragoons initially win, but the French chasseurs at Cheval prove to be more flexible and drive off the follow-up charge of the dragoons. Both units fall back and are severely weakened. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Austrians are still able to repel the enemy attacks and inflict significant losses on them. In the west, Davout changed his tactic, ordering the infantry back and ordering heavy cavalry to the bridge. He also moved his artillery to the river for support. But heavy counterfire from the enemy cannons drive the cuirassiers back again. Davout counters with his hussars crossing the bridge, but the feared catastrophe was looming in the center. The northwestern part of the city fell victim to the French, and they captured some of the regimental flags. An hour later, shortly after 4 p.m., the second northern district was also lost. The last defenders in the south were also attacked from the east. Neumarkt could no longer be held, and around 5 p.m. the last defenders surrendered. Now the overall situation had changed drastically. Oudinot's cavalry rushed through the city to threaten the Archduke's 5th Corps. Massena in the east now had his entire corps attack St. Veit with all their might. Field Marshal Kienmeier, who had ordered his troops forward to better support Neumarkt, suddenly found himself in an untenable position. His artillery position was stormed, and the grenadiers were also fought down, before they could reach the protective walls of the monastery again. The remaining dragoons retreated south in an orderly manner. Despite Davout's best efforts to take advantage of the situation, Archduke Ludwig's corps managed to retreat also in orderly manner, and at the same time deny the French the way across the river. It was only when darkness fell that they gave up their positions and retreated. The Austrians lost 11,000 able-bodied men. The French 7,000. half of which veterans from Davout's corps. Therefore, a costly victory for the French. The question remains for you as to which path the Austrian will take now. The shattered 2nd Corps and 2nd Reserve Corps retreat to Neumarkt under the protection of the last dragoons to return to Austria across the Inn. The 5th Corps has spent or lost almost of its artillery ammunition, as well as most of its supplies, and the supply line to Passau is interrupted. The 5th Corps could first march to Ampfing to join the main army, the 5th and the 6th Corps, if possible. Second, also go back to Neumarkt to protect the fleeing corps from the French. An important decision. There lies the indirect question as to whether one should strive for a decisive battle or try to lead the remaining corps back towards Vienna as intact as possible. I'm looking forward to your decision. For the promised curious fact. On the very day as our fictional battle, or more or less one day before, the real battle of Neumarkt St. Veit was fought. On the Austrian side even with similar participants. If that's not a coincidence, till then.